Hi, I'm Stephen, and this is an out of sequence episode for just another knitting podcast. Bibi's already completed her What I Knit in 2024, or 2024's greatest knits, so now it's my turn. This is a bit late. I leveled up my procrastination, I guess. I've kind of been putting it off, but I now have decided to put my own face in front of the camera and show you what I have been knitting on this year, for those of you that probably haven't already seen everything already. So it's just a good roundup. So first up, the first thing I completed this year was the beloved cardigan. It's a half fisherman's knit grandpa style cardigan. I was really looking forward to finishing it. I really wanted the finished garment. I was looking forward to it. It's the first time I'd ever knit in spin cycle, so I knit it in the dream state. Spin cycle, dyed in the wool. Not dyed in the wool. Stay out of the forest. That's the colour. Get it right. But it was definitely dream state, so I'm assuming that's the heavier yarn. So, and then the other contrast yarn was knit in the Wild Earth Naturals in the chocolate colourway. So that was the colourway that we all here in Christchurch enjoyed and promptly sold the shop out and killed the supply of it because there's only so many sheep and they only produce so much wool. So this is the garment. I'll try and hold it straight. I've tried putting it on. I'm not going to put it on. It's quite hot in here today. This might be the second time that I've filmed this. And I did have a jersey on the first time and it was very warm. So I'm just trying it again in a t-shirt and let's see how we get on this time. So this is the full completed jersey. Like I say, it's quite bright, quite striking. And like I say, I really enjoyed the idea of the jersey, but I don't enjoy the wearing of it. I was a bit disappointed in that the half brioche doesn't have the structural integrity for the weight of the yarn. So that was perhaps something that I learned, in particular around the shoulders. So it's a very heavy cardigan because it actually is quite long. It actually goes right down below my backside and halfway, well not halfway down the backs of my legs, but it does hit the tops of my legs as well. So it is pretty heavy. But yeah, you can see just holding it up on the shoulders, there's not a lot of structural integrity in the shoulder. So it tends to pull and then it just kind of pulls and slips off the shoulders, which I find quite annoying. I did combat that a little bit by doing a non-stretchy bind off. So the bind off itself is quite firm, so the idea of it was that it would kind of cinch itself across the tops of my shoulders, but even that hasn't proved enough yet. So like I say, it's a jersey I like to own, but it's also not a jersey that I reach for regularly, unfortunately. It did teach me that grandpa cardigans are not my thing. And actually, to be perfectly honest, I'm not 100% sure that I like cardigans at all. I much prefer the jersey style garments, v-necks perhaps in particular, although I only have the one v-neck. So maybe there's more of them in my future. So anyway, that is the beloved cardigan. Good to own, fun to knit, really fun to knit actually, to be perfectly honest. But a little bit disappointed in the overall outcome, so would not do again. The next thing was another jersey which the results of which were perhaps less than spectacular. As a garment itself, it came out just fine. I knit it correctly. There's not that many mistakes, if any, actually in it. And that's the Gib 2. By Angela Mowry, or Gibby as I like to call it, just because of the 2 is written in Roman numerals, so it kind of looks like I. So I find it amusing. Maybe and perhaps probably nobody else does, but That's it. This is Gib 2. It has a nice raglan cable detail, which I actually really appreciate. I think I'm getting some good texture focus here, so you can really see the texture pattern on this garment. I like the colour I chose for it, but I don't like the wool selection. I made a mistake, 2 mistakes on this jersey, and both of them are fairly, I won't say terminal, but they really mean that the jersey perhaps has a more limited lifespan than perhaps what it could have. The first one is actually part of the design choice. It's something that I learned that I don't like, but if you look at the front of the neck here, it's very flat across the front. Hard to hold it up, but you can see it's just basically a straight line. Here, there's no short rows or anything to curve the front of the neck. So for me, it sits quite high on my neck. When I was wearing it, it sits kind of up about here. And to be perfectly honest, that's too high for me. And it also brings on the second problem with that garment, and that is my yarn selection was too soft. It's a jersey that I wanted to wear every day, repeat wears, into the office, out of the office, but the yarn doesn't have the strength for that level of use. It's too soft, so there's 2 things that are happening with it. So obviously the neck strikes the stubble on my neck, which is a perpetual problem as I usually eat out shirts and t-shirts and all sorts of other things, and jerseys are no exception. So the front of this collar has become very fluffy, and I expect if I carry on wearing this a lot, I might actually eat through the entire plies of the yarn. But it's something for the future, but also something to avoid. The other thing is too, because the yarn's soft, the texture pattern on the garment is getting lost. It's almost getting flattened. So as I sit in my chair in my office and I brush up against my desk, I've noticed that there's real flattening of the texture. Now, the camera, oh hang on, wrong side. This is the back of the garment where I sit against my chair. Now, I'm not sure how easy it is to see, but the texture pattern there, and I probably really am pushing it, has actually become quite flat. There's no raised stitches. It's very much gone like you get for any of you that wear jerseys in an office and you're rubbing your forearms on the desk. It's very much flattened out and shows wear patterns like that, but that's really just from compression against the back of a seat. So yeah, I think the yarn was too soft, and so if I was going to knit again, which I'm not, I would have picked a sturdier yarn, so something that isn't quite so soft. This was I think 100% merino, and not really the right yarn for the job. Speaking of yarn which was the right yarn for the job, I knit my next garment, the So Basic sweater by Maxim Sear, Max the Knitter. This is it here. I knit this garment in Wild Earth Yarns Aspen, I think it was, and the colourway was Cherry. So this was, I won't say it was a new release yarn, but it was the first time that myself or any of my knitting peers managed to get our hands on that yarn, and so we were quite excited for knitting it up. The pattern itself, it's in all over top down raglan. It was a sea of stockinette. It was very easy to knit, but the thing that I learned most on this pattern was small needles, 4-ply yarn creates a lot of stitches. So the garment itself took me a lot longer than I thought that it was going to take to knit, and in fact the stitches compressed quite a lot, so when I actually blocked it, it grew a lot, way more than I thought it was going to. And yes, I maybe shouldn't have swatched on the garment. I probably should have had a separate swatch, And that's a real lesson for me in that swatching, blocking your swatch. If I'd blocked my swatch, I wouldn't have had that problem. So yeah, I effectively had to cut about 2 inches of stitches off the bottom of the jersey and then pick up and reknit the rib. Also, because it had stretched so much around the collar, it was almost a bit like an off-the-shoulder number. So I really had to cut the top out and then reknit up with about 30 less stitches just to bring the shoulders and everything in. So it was a bit of a trial. I was quite prepared to frog it, which would have been a shame. But I did manage to save it to the point where it doesn't look super weird. It's very sweatshirty, and it is something that I wear every day or every other day maybe to the office. And the yarn itself is worn exceptionally well too. There's a little bit of fluffing, but it hasn't pilled. It's maintained its integrity, so I'm really pleased with it. Yeah, it was a great knit. I would definitely recommend that one. And in fact, I think I seen, was it Jonathan Day? He has knit a couple of them as well. So it seems to be a very popular men's pattern. The next thing, and the last jersey that I managed to knit for the year, or at least finish, was the one that I'm perhaps most proud of, and it also introduced me to all over colourwork and fair isle knitting. So that is, without too much more ado, Troutbeck. So I was super happy with how this came out. As you might think or might imagine, I was a little bit nervous. It's knit in pieces flat, so there's not a lot of scope for testing size. A lot of it has to be taken on trust, which I did. I went a little bit big in terms of width, just to be safe, so I think I knit the 51 inch size pattern, so second largest anyway, so it was the 2XL, which turned out to be the right choice. I guess I was worried about knitting my colourwork tight, which I maybe did. My row gauge was certainly seemed to be a lot more dense than perhaps what was shown on the picture and the model on the front. But all up, it wasn't such a problem, because effectively the pattern itself tells you to knit for a certain amount of time until you get the right height. So as long as you've got the width correct, then you have the ability to, at least below the sleeve separation, you've got the ability to change the length of the garment, so you can get at least a comfortable fit. So I am fairly happy with what I managed to achieve with Troutbeck. It was the first V-neck that I've ever knit, so that was something new as well. It did create a prodigious amount of ends. That's the one thing, if I've got a takeaway from knitting colourwork, fair isle colourwork flat, is be prepared to weave in many ends on every piece. So each piece has at least 2 ends on almost every other row. So yeah, there was literally hundreds of them. And I maintain a large pile of ends just to remind me that knitting colourwork flat has a few side effects. But anyway, I guess you could almost say I learned, this garment also taught me how to weave in ends for colourwork. So if I turn it inside out, I don't think I did too bad. So if I was to hold up the inside there, you can see where all the ends are if you look closely, but it's not super obvious that there are literally dozens of ends in that colourwork. So I was pretty happy with that. Yeah, that's Troutbeck. So it's inspired me to knit more. I'm going to move from Marie Wallen, as I've said in the podcasts, to try some more Alice Starmore things, particularly from her Tudor Roses book. Obviously nothing for me, because they're all women's patterns, and women's shapes. But really as a piece of art, I really want to explore painting some of these jerseys, or painting with yarn. It's something that I find fascinating and I'm really looking forward to doing. I say a lot. The last thing that I knit this year, and it's the last things that I've finished, was the Briodag Set Sans Scarf. So there's the hat. So this is the Briodag hat. It's supposed to be a beret. I'm not quite sure I achieved the sizing for it to be a beret. There's a photo of Gibby with it, and she's sort of worn it, and it looks a little bit beret-like, but I don't think I've got the increases right around the brim or the sizing or something. So I really might try knitting this again and just seeing how it turns out. But I don't think Gibby would particularly like it as a beret anyway, but I don't know. So that was Alice Starmore's Briodag hat, and then there's the Briodag gloves that go with it. So this is also a set. It's all knit in Alice Starmore's own Hebridean yarn. The yarn itself was also the first time I'd knit with heathered yarn, which was, I find it quite amazing yarn. I really, really like it. It's where I learned when we were in Shetland, we went to talk with Gary Jameson, I think his name is, and he was talking about the process how the Jamesons heather the yarn. So basically they get the yarn, they basically shred it. So it goes in this big like blowing room where it all sort of fluffs around, and then they put different sorts of yarns in and it kind of all gets blown together. And then they condense it and then they respin it and create a single ply or something like that anyway. No yarn expert, but yeah, blown yarns, they seem to be a thing, and you can get some really amazing multicolors in there. So it's not variegated, so it doesn't have pooling issues or anything. It's not color changing because it doesn't really change over set things. It's just kind of, it's almost like a mull but at a fiber level. So yeah, I really, really like that. So anyway, Briodag gloves, wood knit again. Too small for me, but that's about as far as I can get my hands in. But it was the first time I ever managed to, or ever attempted to knit individual fingers. So that was a challenge, particularly as we were knitting these while we were away. We were in hotel rooms, and the light wasn't the best. I was working in dark yarns. Many bad words were said. So I actually picked up a wee technique that I actually found. I'd done one glove by that stage and was so frustrated, so I did a second glove, and that was putting the stitches that need to get held between the fingers on stitch markers. So instead of trying to pick them up or hold them, the ones that you can just put a wee stitch marker through, so you know which stitch you need to go and pick up, and you can just pull the stitch marker so it makes the hole nice and big, and you can get that needle and the thread through, or the yarn through. So I'd try that again. It seemed to work really well, and it made the last few fingers on the second glove much, much simpler. So I was pretty happy with that. So wood knit again. I'd be quite keen to try some different colours. Although probably, let's be realistic, I'm probably going to just pick different colour patterns for similar stitch count gloves and try knitting those. So that's everything that I finished in 2024. I did spend quite a bit of time on some other things which obviously aren't finished yet. So there's still Eagle Collar, there's She Shader, which I've really spent probably 2 months of the year on already. And I did waste a little bit of time on the now frogged Svensson, which was a little bit disappointing, but I think I made the right choice in terms of that. I would have spent a lot of time and really wouldn't have worn the end result that much. So probably made the right call. So yeah, that's my roundup for 2024. I'm looking forward to 2025 and really trying to go on a complicated colourwork knitting journey. That's at the moment what I think. I'm looking forward to going and seeing some new places. So we're off to Bendigo in 2025. Going to try some new designers and some new patterns, maybe some new techniques. So yeah, things to look forward to. So I'm not sure how long this is, but it's probably not that long, and it's at risk of turning into a ramble now. So I'll bring it to a close. Thank you for watching. Please go out and have a look at some of our other episodes where you will perhaps see some more detail around the things that I've knit, and obviously the things that Bibi's knit. And we appreciate your time. Thanks for joining me. Goodbye.